Indigenous people had been around in this part of the world for thousands and thousands of years. Our teachings as Indigenous people are that we were created here. And our creation story is about this land. We did not migrate here. We were created here. The important thing is to know that what we have been taught is that our beliefs were wrong. Their beliefs were right. Indian residential schools were established following Confederation because Sir John A. Macdonald and his government and others within his government, not just him, believed that Indian parents were incapable parents, incapable of raising children who would fit into Canadian society. He's famously quoted in 1883 when he was justifying appropriating money for the construction of residential schools as saying, if we leave the children in their communities and educate them in schools in the reserves, they'll go home at night back to their parents, who are nothing but heathens and savages. And then they'll learn to read and write in the schools, but they will be savages who will read and write. Schools were in place for 7 generations. 7 generations. Each generation was destroyed a little bit more by each of their experiences. We're going to have to rebuild this generation by generation. Reconciliation is not about forgiveness, it's not about forgetting. Reconciliation is about coming to terms with this and being able to move forward. But also keep in mind that the precondition to mutual respect is self-respect. And what that means is that the first thing we have to do on the road to mutual respect is we have to make sure that our young people have a sense of pride in who they are. They know their history. They know the answers to those questions. They know what their purpose is, and they know who they are. Because then the relationship will be one of equals.
This conference, I think, is very historic amongst OPSEU. It's its first Indigenous conference, and everybody in the circle has just been so wonderful in contributing and pulling their resources together to get it off the ground. And I've been very encouraged by the feedback of participants. The information they feel is something that has been very tangible to them, things that they never understood about residential school survivors. Now they come away with a better understanding, not just an understanding really from a perspective of hearing speakers, but also the lived experiences of participants that are in the circle and in this conference.
At this particular time, it was very easy to choose that theme and to come up with that theme for Truth and Reconciliation and that OPSEU's journey with the Aboriginal people and OPSEU's members being able to participate in that journey.
The first thing that struck me was the warmth of the welcome from our hosts, from the Mohawk Nation here in Akwesasne. And that's something I will definitely take away from and remember, kind of cherish, really. Secondly was the depth of feeling, I suppose, especially in the circle we had yesterday. People talking about their experiences and all sorts of experiences. We had survivors of residential schools and the terrible things they had to go through. We had a number of people, and I was really struck by this, who had recently rediscovered their Indigenous roots.
I'm 55 years old, and as a result of that posting, I connected with my birth family. I have 2 brothers and a sister, 12 nieces and nephews, and discovered that I was 7th generation Métis from St. Laurent, Manitoba.
Isn't it more interesting and more colorful in the confines of a union or a community or a city or really a country to have lots of representation from different cultures?
I think there's a genuine desire to explore those areas where there's a lack of understanding, where we're lack of knowledge. There's a serious intent to do something and to move forward with something. It's not to lay something out in policy and say, well, we have Aboriginal policy. We acknowledge what's happened in the past without knowing what it was. Okay, we're getting a clearer understanding. But the real question is, where do we go from here? If we're going to have a partnership, what's it going to consist of? What's the relationship going to be?
I think the role of the union as we continue to move forward is to build on the partnerships that we're trying to establish with Aboriginal and Indigenous communities. And I think that's the role of the Indigenous Circle, being comprised. We're more or less like the liaison to those various communities throughout Ontario.
Within OPSEU, after this conference, I'd like to see stronger language within the collective agreements. I'd like to see within the collective agreements that it's mandated for these organizations, agencies, or government buildings, educational sector, social service sector, that they educate their members, their staff, their managers, that they need to be more respectful, that they need to collaborate with Indigenous people.
We want to continue to build that partnership with Indigenous communities for years to come, not just for the next few months, but for years to come, to keep building, to keep working together as true partners and making life better.
Key to reconciliation is education. It was education that created this mess through the schools. It's education that's going to get us out of this in the long run.